Beneath the wide, endless skies of Texas, Luke Hunter sat on the worn porch of his family's ranch, chewing on a piece of hay. The ranch had been his home for as long as he could remember. His grandfather had built it, his father had worked it, and now it was his turn to care for the land, the cattle, and the memories that tied them all together. It was a peaceful life. Until it wasn't. It started innocently enough, with the sound of construction one morning. The kind of sound Luke had grown accustomed to: saws, hammers, drills. But this wasn't the typical construction of new fences or barn repairs. No, this was different. Across his property line, he saw rows of shiny new houses sprouting up like weeds. Big houses, fancy houses, the kind of houses people dream of when they leave the city and try to settle in the peace of the country. Luke had always liked the peace of his land, the freedom that came with it. But he hadn't expected it to come with neighbors so close. His first real encounter with the new neighbors was with a woman named Claire. She showed up on his property one Saturday morning wearing a sharp green blazer. Even though the weather was cool and overcast, she had dark sunglasses on, like she was trying to shield herself from something, maybe the truth. She approached Luke with the kind of confidence that suggested she owned the place. And maybe she thought she did. "Good morning," she said, handing him a piece of paper. "I'm Claire Barnes, president of the Oak Creek Homeowners Association. We're just next door. I'm sure you've seen the construction." Luke had nodded. He'd seen the houses. He'd seen the pristine lawns, the sleek cars and driveways. "Yeah, I saw them. Looks like y'all are building quite the neighborhood." Claire barely glanced at his ranch as she spoke, scanning the land like she was trying to find something wrong with it. "Well, we like to keep things nice," she said, wrinkling her nose. "And, frankly, your cows, the smells, the noise, it's just not the kind of atmosphere we're going for. We have rules here, Mr. Hunter." Luke didn't say anything at first. He just stared at her, watching her fidget with her clipboard. It was clear she was used to people bending to her will. But Luke didn't bend. "I don't mean to be rude, ma'am," he said after a pause. "But this isn't part of your neighborhood. This is Hunter Ranch. Been here long before those houses went up." Claire's lips tightened, a frown forming on her face. "We'll see about that," she muttered, turning on her heel and marching back to her shiny SUV. Luke shook his head and chuckled. He figured she'd learn the hard way. People like her always did. But what came next was far from what he expected. Over the next few weeks, strange things started happening. The first sign of trouble came in the mail. Luke received a letter from the Oak Creek HOA, demanding that he pay dues for the community's upkeep. He ignored it at first, thinking it was some mistake. But then the visits began. The first police officer showed up on a Tuesday afternoon. He was a young guy, nervous, holding a clipboard, claiming there were unregistered animals on Luke's property. "Everything looks fine here, sir," the officer said after a quick inspection. "No need for alarm." Luke just shrugged. "No worries, officer. Come back anytime." But they did come back. Again and again. Sometimes it was about loud animal noises. Sometimes it was about fire hazards. Other times they claimed his barn was a safety violation. Luke had been a rancher his whole life. He knew the land. He knew the animals. None of this made any sense. But he also knew it wasn't over. Then, one evening, something happened that made Luke's heart drop into his stomach. He walked out to the barn and found the door wide open. Tools were missing. Hay was scattered. And Daisy, his oldest cow, the one he had raised from a calf, was limping, frightened, and bruised. He called the vet, who confirmed Daisy had been spooked. He felt a knot tighten in his chest. Luke sat on his porch that night with a shotgun across his lap. Not to use it, but to send a message. He wasn't going to let anyone hurt his animals. The next morning, the police returned, but this time it was different. They weren't alone. There was an animal control officer, a city inspector, and, of course, Claire, wearing that same smug expression and carrying her clipboard. They demanded to inspect the barn for illegal dairy activities. "I've been here my whole life. There's nothing illegal going on," Luke said, his voice steady but growing angry. The officer just shook his head. "We received a report of an illegal dairy facility." Luke stared at the inspector. "You've got to be kidding me." But the officer and the city worker just pushed past him, heading toward the barn. The barn was his. His grandfather had built it. But somehow, to these strangers, it was just another site to inspect, another piece of land to control. It was inside the barn that the bombshell hit. The inspector turned to Luke, clipboard in hand, pointing to a stack of unmarked boxes in the corner. These look like illegal dairy products, the man said. No health inspection stickers. No refrigeration. This is a health code violation. Luke's jaw dropped. He didn't sell dairy. He didn't even process milk. He gave it away, donated it to orphanages. These boxes weren't his. He was being set up. This isn't mine. Luke shouted, his fists clenched. Someone planted this here. But Claire just crossed her arms and smirked. Sounds like someone got caught. Luke's blood boiled. He had worked for everything he had, and now someone was trying to destroy it all. He turned to the officer, who was clearly confused. You really think I'd run an illegal dairy operation inside my barn and just leave everything out in the open? The officer hesitated, unsure of what to do. We'll need to investigate. But until then, no commercial activity. No milking, no selling. Just to be safe. Luke was stunned. I don't have commercial activity. I give milk to kids. That's it. The officer gave him a look, like Luke was the one in the wrong here. But the whole thing felt wrong. He knew someone had planted the evidence, and his gut told him it was Claire and her HOA cronies behind it all. They wanted him out of the way, and they were willing to go to extreme lengths to make that happen. For the next few days, Luke didn't let his guard down. He installed security cameras on the barn and the fence. He even put up floodlights, all while trying to keep things normal for his animals. But Luke knew it wasn't over. It was just beginning. Then one afternoon, a little girl came by, standing at the fence and staring at his cows. Her name was Molly, and she lived in the HOA neighborhood. Her mother had told her not to come near Luke's land because it was trouble land. But Molly wasn't afraid. She reached through the fence to pet Daisy, and Luke couldn't help but smile. Molly was different. She didn't see the ranch as a problem. She saw it for what it was, a peaceful place, full of life. And that made Luke realize something important. Even though he was fighting a big battle, he wasn't alone. There were still good people out there. But that night, after the sun had set and the stars began to twinkle in the sky, Luke saw something he didn't expect. Security footage showed figures sneaking around the property, figures he recognized. Claire, and a man in a suit. They were planting more evidence, trying to frame him for a crime he didn't commit. Luke knew it was time to take action. The next morning, with Benny's help, Luke set up a drone to capture footage of any suspicious activity. They didn't have to wait long. At 2:41 a.m., the figures showed up again, this time right by the creek. The drone caught them clearly. Claire, holding a hard drive, throwing it into the water to destroy evidence. Luke couldn't believe his eyes. But just as they were about to react, a fire broke out in the barn. Luke's heart sank as he watched the barn burn, the flames licking the air, smoke pouring from the roof. He ran inside, barely able to see through the smoke, as Daisy cried out in fear. But he made it to her. He saved her. And when the fire trucks arrived, the damage was done. The barn was gone, but his animals were safe. Luke was furious. He had proof now. He wasn't going down without a fight. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. With the help of the community, Luke rebuilt his barn. People donated supplies, and the town rallied around him. But Claire? She disappeared. No one knew where she went. But Luke wasn't concerned about her anymore. He had his land, his animals, and the support of the people who mattered. Then came the final blow. A letter arrived, threatening him once again. Final warning, it said. Sell, or everything burns. Luke didn't flinch. He called Benny, and they set off to find the people behind this. With Benny's help, they tracked down Daisy, who had been taken from the ranch and locked up by Claire. But Luke got her back. Finally, Claire and the HOA's true intentions were exposed. They had been trying to steal Luke's land all along, planning to turn it into a luxury golf course. But the people of the town weren't having it. They stood with Luke, and in the end, justice was served. The HOA was disbanded. Claire was charged with multiple crimes. And Luke? He stood in front of his rebuilt barn, watching the cows graze, the sun setting behind him. He had won. He had fought for his land, his family, and his animals. And he would never let anyone take that from him. But as Luke sat there, his hand resting on Daisy's head, he realized something. The fight wasn't just about land or property. It was about doing what's right, even when the world tries to push you down. Because in the end, truth always wins. What do you think? Was Luke right to fight back? Or should he have taken the deal? Let me know in the comments below.